The vastness of the galaxy, filled with the towering ancient empires of alien species, was a constant reminder to humanity of their insignificance. Earth, a small blue planet nestled in the corner of a nameless star system, was far from the bustling centers of galactic power. The Confederation, a coalition of over 30 powerful races, had little time for a species they considered inferior. To them, humans were fragile creatures, confined to a small, primitive world, unable to harness the true potential of the cosmos. Diplomats from various species would arrive at Earth on rare occasions, with their ships gliding silently through the atmosphere like predators circling their prey. They were polite, always gracious, but their eyes, cold and distant, told a different story. Humans were nothing more than an experiment in survival, a species that had yet to realize its true potential. It was as if they expected humanity to evolve into something grander one day. But the universe didn't wait for such niceties. Humanity's evolution, they believed, would take millennia. Yet, humanity had a spark, a hunger for knowledge that set them apart from the other species. They were resilient, adaptable, and curious, qualities the galaxy had long forgotten to value. But for all their virtues, the Confederation saw them as weak. The human race had barely begun to understand the true depths of space, and their attempts to gain any foothold beyond their solar system were laughable. Their first attempts at building a fleet of ships for interstellar exploration were amateurish, their technology crude. The alien empires scoffed at the thought of humans joining the galactic stage. They were relegated to the sidelines, forever watching from afar as the powerful species held the reins of the galaxy. The situation seemed hopeless, and there was no reason for humanity to believe otherwise. The governments of Earth were divided, scrambling to catch up to alien technology, and still mired in their own political struggles. Yet, among the chaos, something remarkable was unfolding. A shadowy organization, hidden in the depths of the United Nations' most secretive labs, began to piece together fragments of old, forbidden knowledge. The remnants of ancient alien artifacts, left behind on Earth by long-dead civilizations, had been gathering dust in secret vaults for centuries. These relics were scattered across the globe, hidden in forgotten corners of the world where only the most daring explorers dared to venture. One such artifact, discovered in the barren hills of Siberia, would change everything. It was a relic of unimaginable power, a massive oblong crystal, shimmering with an eerie glow, its surface etched with strange symbols that no human had ever seen. The moment the crystal was unearthed, strange signals began to pulse through Earth's communication networks, signals that made no sense, yet were undeniably structured, like a language from the depths of the stars themselves. As more scientists gathered around the object, its influence began to grow. Their minds were pulled into its grasp. Visions of ancient civilizations flashed before their eyes, of empires built and destroyed, of weapons capable of obliterating entire worlds, and technologies that bent the laws of nature. For years, humanity's greatest minds struggled to unlock the secrets of the artifact, their efforts often futile. But then, in a breakthrough no one had expected, a single scientist, Dr. Althea Gorsky, made contact. She was a physicist working for a classified project under the United Nations, one of the few who had been granted access to the artifact. Unlike her colleagues, she saw not just the symbols, but the underlying logic. Her deep understanding of quantum mechanics allowed her to manipulate the energy flowing from the relic, turning raw power into something tangible, something real. It was then that humanity began to understand the true power it had stumbled upon. The artifact was not just a relic of a long-dead race. It was a guide, one that held the key to the cosmos. It was designed by an ancient civilization that had once ruled vast stretches of space, only to fall to its own hubris. The artifact contained knowledge on propulsion systems, energy manipulation, and even the means to manipulate space-time itself. This wasn't just technology. It was a blueprint to become gods in their own right. But the aliens would never know. Humanity would keep this secret to themselves, at least for now. The first human-built interstellar ship was constructed in the deepest vaults beneath the Earth's surface. Using the knowledge gleaned from the artifact, the ship was capable of traveling faster than light, breaking the barriers that had once confined humanity to its solar system. And so, with one ship, humanity's journey into the stars began. The Confederation, so secure in its arrogance, remained oblivious. Earth sent its first message beyond the confines of their solar system, a simple signal that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity is ready. But what the galaxy didn't know was that they were not just sending a message. They were challenging the very foundation of the established order. The first ship left Earth's orbit, leaving behind a planet still mocked by the rest of the galaxy, but it did not go unnoticed. Those who were watching saw that humanity's ignorance had been its greatest weapon. They had no preconceived notions, no biases, and no fear of the unknown. The rest of the galaxy had underestimated them, and that mistake would cost them dearly. The game was about to change, and humanity was no longer just a pawn in the galaxy's grand chessboard. They were ready to take their place as players. In the months that followed the discovery of the artifact, Earth was thrust into a whirlwind of rapid technological advancement. Dr. Althea Gorsky's breakthrough not only unlocked the secrets of the alien relic, but also ignited a firestorm of innovation across the planet. The world's scientific community, now united in a singular cause, began to work around the clock, decoding the artifact's encrypted data, reverse engineering its technologies, and crafting the first human-made ships capable of faster-than-light travel. Humanity's new fleet, although small, was a marvel. Unlike the sprawling, imposing warships of the galaxy's ancient empires, these ships were sleek, modular, and fast, designed not for raw firepower, but for precision and adaptability. The ships were equipped with energy shields that absorbed and redirected enemy fire, cloaking systems that rendered them invisible to most forms of detection, and quantum propulsion that allowed them to traverse star systems in mere hours, something the galaxy had long thought impossible for a species as primitive as humanity. The Confederation, the galactic body that governed the known universe, paid little attention to these advancements at first. The higher echelons of power, particularly the elite ruling council, continued to mock Earth's achievements. To them, humanity's technology was still too crude to pose any real threat. The Federation's fleets were vast, their weaponry far more advanced, and they had no reason to believe that a small, insignificant species like humanity could ever challenge them. However, in the shadows, things were beginning to shift. The more humanity grew in strength, the more ripples it sent across the galaxy. The Valkale, an ancient race known for their cunning intelligence and ruthless tactics, took particular notice. They had once been the rulers of a large portion of the galaxy, dominating weaker species through both diplomacy and fear. But now, they were beginning to feel the heat of competition. While humanity had yet to fully grasp the scope of their potential, the Valkale knew one thing for certain: humans were not as weak as the galaxy thought. Kara Rhodes, a decorated officer in the United Earth Fleet, had seen the changes firsthand. Initially skeptical about the massive leap in technology, she had been one of the first humans to pilot a newly designed interstellar vessel. She was stationed aboard the Vanguard, the pride of Earth's growing fleet. The ship's maiden voyage to Alpha Centauri was meant to be a diplomatic mission, one where humanity would prove its peaceful intentions by establishing a colony. But the mission quickly turned dangerous. As the Vanguard arrived in the Alpha Centauri system, they detected an unregistered alien fleet, the Valkale, lurking in the shadows of the stars. Kara's heart sank as she realized that they had come not to negotiate, but to dominate. Their ships were enormous, monolithic beasts of war, their black metal hulls etched with glowing red symbols, each one a reminder of their fearsome reputation. The Valkale leader, a cold and calculating commander named Falfar, demanded humanity's immediate surrender. The terms were simple. Earth would serve as a vassal state, supplying resources to the Valkale Empire in exchange for their protection. It was a typical tactic, one used time and again by the Valkyrie as they expanded their reach across the galaxy. The message was clear: submit or perish. Kara Rhodes had little time to react. She had only a few minutes to decide whether to comply or defy the overwhelming power of the Valkyrie. She couldn't bring herself to surrender, not after everything humanity had achieved. But the odds were insurmountable. Alone in a foreign star system, humanity was outmatched, and Kara's instincts screamed that they would be wiped out in an instant if they resisted. But it was then that something extraordinary happened. The Vanguard, inexplicably, began to react to the Valkyrie ships with an eerie intelligence of its own. The ship's systems, powered by the same alien artifact that had sparked humanity's renaissance, began to display unanticipated capabilities. The energy shields flickered into action before they were even fully activated, a byproduct of the AI embedded in the ship's core, a remnant of the artifact's mysterious design. The Valkyrie ships, confident in their superior firepower, had no idea what was coming. Kara ordered a tactical maneuver that no one, not even the highest-ranking military commanders, would have dared attempt. She directed the Vanguard to plunge into the heart of the Valkyrie fleet, using their sheer speed and cloaking technology to dart between their ships like a phantom. The Valkyrie fired blindly, their heavy weapons unable to target the agile human vessel. In the confusion, the Vanguard used the unique capabilities of its energy shields to absorb the incoming fire and redirect it back at the attackers, disabling one of the Valkyrie ships in a spectacular display of raw energy. The Valkyrie were stunned. The Vanguard had been designed with adaptability in mind, and the crew had learned to think on their feet, something the Valkyrie had never considered. What followed was a series of calculated strikes, each one designed to disrupt the enemy's coordinated assault. The Valkyrie, unaccustomed to such tactics, faltered. Their arrogance, their belief in their invincibility, cost them dearly. Within hours, the Valkyrie fleet was in disarray. Humanity had just won its first victory in the stars, and it sent shockwaves through the galaxy. No longer were they the weak, fragile species the aliens had dismissed. Humanity had proven that their ingenuity, adaptability, and relentless drive could defeat even the most formidable foes. Kara, now a hero, knew this was only the beginning. The Confederation, the Valkyrie, and every other power that had underestimated Earth would soon understand one thing. Humanity was no longer just a spectator in the galactic game. They were players, and they were here to stay. Humanity's victory over the Valkyrie had been nothing short of miraculous. Kara Rhodes, now hailed as a hero, stood at the forefront of Earth's new military command, her every move watched by the eyes of the galaxy. Her name was synonymous with the unexpected, the embodiment of humanity's grit and tenacity. The Vanguard's stunning performance had shaken the galactic powers to their core, and the galaxy was left scrambling to understand what had just happened. How had a species so universally deemed weak, so new to the galactic stage, defeated one of the most feared empires in the galaxy? The Confederation, which had once treated humanity as a trivial afterthought, now found itself facing a difficult choice: recognize humanity's growing power or risk further alienating them. Earth's first victory had sparked something even more profound than a military success. It had ignited a movement. Aliens that had once scorned humanity now saw them as a potential ally, a key player in the ever-changing galactic order. Humanity, it seemed, was no longer just the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. But with this newfound attention came danger. The Valkyrie, humiliated and wounded, were far from defeated. Their empires were built on pride, and their losses would not be easily forgiven. The Valkyrie's leader, Valfar, seethed with rage. His empire had never been bested in battle, let alone by a species so young. He vowed revenge and began amassing his forces in secret, biding his time for the perfect moment to strike back at the humans and crush their rebellion once and for all. The Valkyrie weren't just angry. They were desperate to restore their reputation, and they would stop at nothing to reclaim their place as the rulers of the galaxy. While the Valkael licked their wounds, the Confederation began to reassess the situation. Though there were some who still viewed humanity's victory as a fluke, others, like Ambassador Zera, saw it as an inevitable turning point. Zera, a senior diplomat from the insectoid Karath race, had been observing humanity's rise with cautious optimism. Her people had long believed in the value of alliances and cooperation over domination, and she knew that humanity's uniqueness, its hunger for progress, and its incredible adaptability would be the key to tipping the balance in the galaxy. The Karath and a few other races began reaching out to Earth, offering potential alliances, though some in the Confederation feared that this could destabilize the galaxy. Kara, however, had no interest in the politics of the Confederation. She had seen firsthand the power that unity could create, but she was aware that humanity could not rely on others for their survival. It was time to build a future independent of alien interference. Under her leadership, Earth's military and scientific capabilities grew exponentially. New fleets were built, new technologies were developed, and most importantly, a new ideology began to take shape. Humanity's strength did not lie in the vastness of its fleet or the power of its weapons. It lay in its ingenuity, its ability to adapt and overcome in the face of adversity. While alien races were entrenched in their ancient ways, humanity was unburdened by tradition. This made them unpredictable and, more importantly, dangerous. Yet, not everyone was so optimistic. On the fringes of Earth's burgeoning interstellar empire, voices of dissent began to rise. There were factions within humanity who feared that they were becoming too much like the very empires they had once fought against. Some believed that Earth's growing influence could corrupt them, that the pursuit of power would lead humanity down a dark path. These voices, though in the minority, grew louder as Earth's expansion continued. Tensions between those who sought to dominate and those who wanted to maintain humanity's moral compass reached a boiling point. Amid this internal struggle, a new player entered the fray. The enigmatic Syndicate, a shadowy organization of smugglers, mercenaries, and power-hungry factions, saw the rising tensions as an opportunity. They began covertly feeding information to both the alien powers and to humanity's dissident factions, sowing discord wherever they could. Their ultimate goal was simple: to seize control of Earth's future and carve out their own path of dominance. Though they were a small faction, their influence spread rapidly. Earth was not the only one being watched closely. The Syndicate's rise indicated that those who sought power, no matter the cost, were ever present. Kara and her closest allies knew that they couldn't let the rise of the Syndicate go unchecked. The potential for division was too great. It wasn't enough to simply unite humanity against the galaxy's alien powers. They now had to defend against their own rogue elements. The Syndicate's methods were ruthless, and they had already begun to corrupt several high-ranking officers within Earth's own ranks, turning the future of the human empire into a gamble. In response, Kara proposed a daring initiative. An alliance not just with the more peaceful alien races like the Karath, but also with the very species that had once. The plan Kara Rhodes had devised was audacious, but it was the only one that made sense in the face of humanity's growing power. It wasn't enough for humanity to simply defend itself. It had to take the initiative and reshape the galaxy in its image. The Syndicate was a cancer growing within Earth's political system, feeding on instability, and they would stop at nothing to see humanity torn apart from the inside. To survive, humanity needed allies, and not just allies from peaceful races, but the very enemies they had once fought. If they could build a coalition between the galaxy's most feared and powerful species, perhaps humanity could avoid becoming a puppet in a game played by far older and far more dangerous beings. Kara's first step was to reach out to the Valkael, despite the humiliation they had suffered. She knew that the Valkael's pride would be their greatest weakness, but they were also calculating enough to recognize that the galaxy was changing. If they didn't adapt, they'd risk being left behind. The Valkael were always hungry for more power, and that thirst could be redirected toward a common goal, one where humanity could no longer be dismissed as a threat. But negotiations with Valthar, the Valkel leader, were never easy. Valthar, still seething from the Vanguard's humiliating victory, had made it clear that Earth's participation in any future galactic diplomacy would come with consequences. "You have beaten us once, human," he had sneered in their initial meetings, his six-limbed form towering over Kara's, his metallic voice dripping with contempt. "But remember, it is not your strength that concerns me. It is your cunning. Do not think for 1 second that I will bow before your species." Kara's response was calculated, her voice unwavering. "No one's asking you to bow. But we both know that the galaxy is changing. You can either sit back and let it happen, or you can join us in shaping it. If we stand alone, we all fall." Despite his arrogance, the Valkel leader recognized the truth in her words. Kara wasn't offering weakness or submission. She was offering a way forward, a chance to reclaim the Valkel's place in the galaxy by aligning with the human uprising. Eventually, after long, contentious meetings, Valthar agreed to enter into a temporary truce, though the terms of that truce were vague. There would be no full alliance, not yet, but the door was open for collaboration. But the Valkel were not the only ones Kara needed to convince. The Zerathi, a race of highly intelligent, insectoid beings, had quietly observed humanity's rise and were just as wary of the Syndicate as they were of the Valkel. The Zerathi had long been neutral players in galactic politics, but they had always valued knowledge and strategy over brute force. They saw potential in humanity, not just for military power, but for ingenuity and intellect that surpassed even their own. Zera, the Zerathi ambassador to the United Earth Fleet, became Kara's most trusted diplomatic ally. Unlike the Valkel, the Zerathi were far more willing to entertain humanity's offer of cooperation. "Your people are unpredictable, but your potential is undeniable," Zera had said during one of their first meetings. "I see in your species a reflection of our own past, a hunger for understanding, for progress. If your kind can learn as quickly as you fight, then the galaxy may soon see an era unlike any other." For the first time, Kara began to see the seeds of an alliance taking root. The Valkel would be a difficult ally, unpredictable, dangerous, and driven by ego. But the Zerathi, with their careful, measured approach, could balance out the Valkel's volatile nature. Still, there was no denying the complexity of her situation. The Syndicate was watching, and their influence was spreading. Every day, rogue factions within Earth's military and political landscape were being bought and manipulated, pushing the planet closer to the brink of civil war. If she couldn't unite the galaxy, humanity's dreams of independence might be short-lived. The Syndicate's machinations were far-reaching. They had infiltrated Earth's highest levels of government, planting agents within the military and civilian infrastructure. Kara had learned, through covert channels, that the Syndicate had begun collaborating with some of the most dangerous factions in the galaxy, mercenary groups, pirate fleets, and even renegade alien warlords. Their goal was simple: create chaos and destabilize the alliances forming around humanity. If Earth couldn't hold together, then they could take control of the remnants. Their plan was as old as time itself: divide and conquer. Kara's next move was one that would risk everything. She planned to launch a covert operation, one designed not only to disrupt the Syndicate's operations but to send a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be controlled. They would fight for their future, even if it meant tearing down the structures that had kept them oppressed. The plan was bold, too bold for some, but Kara had always believed that the greatest threats could be turned into humanity's greatest advantages. With Zera's help, Kara gathered a coalition of ships, both human and alien, ready to strike against the Syndicate's hidden strongholds on a planet called Nyx. It was a harsh, desolate world, an ideal hiding place for those wishing to remain out of sight. But Kara knew that by taking this risk, humanity would send a message. They were not afraid to go after their enemies, even if those enemies operated in the shadows. As the fleet made its way toward Nyx, Kara stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, the same ship that had helped deliver humanity's first victory. Now, it would be the instrument of their next bold move. "The galaxy thought we were weak," Kara said quietly, gazing out at the stars ahead. "But we've only just begun." And as the fleet jumped into hyperspace, she knew that the galaxy was about to witness the full force of humanity's rise. The operation against the Syndicate was underway, and Kara Rhodes knew that the stakes were higher than ever. Her small fleet, a mix of humanity's finest ships and Zerathi technology, entered the Nyx system, prepared to strike a decisive blow against the rogue organization. The Syndicate had been operating in the shadows for far too long, and this was the moment to expose them for the threat they were. But as Kara stared at the cold expanse of space, a gnawing sense of unease took hold of her. The galaxy was unpredictable, and no victory, no matter how well planned, was guaranteed. The planet Nyx loomed ahead, a desolate world covered in barren landscapes and rust-colored dust storms. It had been used for years by the Syndicate as a base of operations, shielded from prying eyes by its inhospitable environment and remote location. But the Syndicate had underestimated one thing: humanity's resolve. Under Kara's leadership, the fleet had learned to move swiftly and quietly, striking before the enemy could react. They had done it once with the Valkale, and they would do it again. Kara stood on the command deck of the Vanguard, overseeing the operation. Zera, the Zerathi ambassador and key ally in the mission, was at her side. The insectoid diplomat's antennae twitched as she reviewed the data streaming in from the fleet's scouts. "We're nearing the Syndicate's stronghold," Zera said, her voice calm but tinged with anticipation. "Our intel is solid. There are no defenses on the surface, but there may be more hidden installations underground. We'll need to strike fast." Kara nodded. "We'll take their operations offline before they can mount a resistance. The goal is disruption, not total destruction. We don't need to destroy them. We just need to cripple their ability to respond. And I want every Syndicate leader captured, not killed. We need information." The plan was simple: infiltrate the Syndicate's stronghold, disable their communication networks, and capture any high-ranking members who could give them insight into the organization's operations and alliances. It was a risky move, one that required precision and speed, but Kara had no doubts about her crew's ability to execute it. As the fleet entered Nyx's atmosphere, the Vanguard dropped out of hyperspace and sent out a wave of cloaked scout drones, scanning the surface for any signs of enemy activity. Nothing. The surface was as barren as it appeared. No sign of activity from the Syndicate. Kara's instincts told her that something was off. The Syndicate was a clever organization, and they had never been one to leave their bases completely exposed. She ordered the fleet to maintain a low profile and proceed with caution. Minutes later, as the fleet descended into the planet's atmosphere, a warning flashed across Kara's screen. It was a message, but the sender was unknown. "You are already too late." The words hung in the air like a warning bell, and Kara felt a chill run down her spine. She had anticipated some resistance, but this felt different, like they had walked into a trap. It was then that Zera's sharp eyes caught something in the distance, flashes of movement beneath the dust storms. A fleet. Syndicate warships had been hidden in the planet's clouds, and they were now coming online. Shields up. Full evasive maneuvers. Kara barked, her voice sharp as she punched the controls. The Vanguard surged forward, its cloaking systems flickering as it shot toward the surface of Nyx, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts. The Syndicate's warships, though not as powerful as the fleets of the major galactic powers, were well-equipped and maneuverable, their black-hulled ships blending seamlessly with the environment. They opened fire, and Kara's crew scrambled to respond, the Vanguard weaving through the hail of energy bolts. But there was something else in the air, something that made this attack feel different. This wasn't a typical ambush. The Syndicate had been waiting for them, and they had planned this counterattack down to the smallest detail. "We're being overwhelmed," one of Kara's officers called out from the tactical station. "Incoming ships from every direction." Kara's mind raced as she realized the trap had been set with brutal precision. The Syndicate had known they were coming. Every move had been anticipated. The fleet had no chance of breaking through unless they adapted on the fly. Kara had no choice. She initiated a code that activated the Vanguard's experimental technology, an interface with the alien artifact that had jump-started humanity's leap in technological advancement. It was a risky move, one she hadn't planned to use until later, but it was their only hope. The ship's systems hummed as the artifact interfaced with the ship's AI, and for a brief moment, Kara felt a surge of connection. The ship's energy shields flared, absorbing and redirecting enemy fire with uncanny precision. The Vanguard's cloaking field shimmered in and out of existence as it darted through the chaos, evading the Syndicate's attacks. At the same time, the ship's weapon systems adapted to the Syndicate's tactics, firing back with a devastating accuracy that forced the Syndicate to retreat. But it wasn't enough. Kara's fleet had been scattered, and the Syndicate's forces were too vast, too entrenched on Nyx. Kara knew they needed reinforcements, and fast. She sent an emergency transmission to Earth and their allies in the Confederation, hoping that the Zirathi, the Valkale, and the other races who had begun to see humanity as a potential ally would respond. As the battle raged on, Kara's thoughts turned to the larger conflict. The Syndicate's resistance was a sign of something darker, something far more dangerous. The Syndicate had known they were coming. And this wasn't just about power. It was about control. And the Syndicate had made a clear statement with their ambush. Humanity was becoming a threat they were willing to destroy. "Hold the line," Kara muttered, determination hardening in her chest. "We will not back down." The battle for Nyx was only the beginning. In the shadows, the true war was just beginning to unfold, one that would decide the fate of humanity and the future of the galaxy. The battle over Nyx raged on, but the situation was rapidly deteriorating for Kara Rhodes and her fleet. Syndicate warships filled the sky, dark silhouettes against the planet's crimson dust storms. Despite the Vanguard's remarkable adaptive technologies, the fleet was outmatched in both numbers and firepower. The Syndicate had laid their trap with ruthless efficiency, leaving Kara with little room to maneuver. The ship's shields were beginning to crack under the relentless barrage, and if they didn't find a way to end this quickly, the entire fleet would be destroyed. Kara gripped the armrest of her command chair, her thoughts racing. She had expected some form of resistance, but not a trap of this scale. The Syndicate had clearly been waiting for this moment, and now they were using every dirty trick in the book to ensure humanity's defeat. It wasn't just about fighting. This was about survival. "We're losing power to the forward shields," an officer reported from Tactical. "If we don't get reinforcements soon, we'll be sitting ducks." Kara's mind was a whirlwind of options, each one more desperate than the last. Their reinforcements, if they came at all, were still a long way off. The only remaining option was to break through the Syndicate's blockade and make it to Nyx's surface, where the Syndicate's main operations were based. If they could disable the Syndicate's command center, the rest of their forces would be thrown into disarray. "Prep the secondary strike team," Kara ordered. "We're going in. All ships, set course for the surface. We're cutting through." The officers scrambled to follow her command, and the Vanguard veered toward Nyx, its engines roaring as it plunged through the thick atmosphere, dodging enemy fire in a desperate attempt to reach the planet below. Kara's breath came fast as she gripped the edge of the control panel, eyes focused on the planet's surface, where a massive Syndicate complex loomed, a fortress-like structure built into the planet's crust, heavily guarded and well hidden from the untrained eye. As the fleet began descending toward Nyx, Kara's communication officer, Lieutenant Turner, spoke up. "Captain, we've detected a transmission coming from the surface. It's encrypted, but it's definitely Syndicate." "Patch it through," Kara ordered, narrowing her eyes. If the Syndicate was trying to communicate, It meant they were reacting, possibly in panic. It could be their final attempt to reinforce their position. The screen blinked to life, and a grainy image appeared, a figure cloaked in shadows, the voice distorted by interference. "We have anticipated your arrival, human," the voice crackled. "But this will be your last mistake." The transmission cut off abruptly, but the message was clear. They were prepared for whatever humanity could throw at them. The Syndicate wasn't just fighting for control of Nyx. They were fighting for their very survival. Kara's gut tightened. They were being baited. The Syndicate had a counterattack waiting, and they weren't about to let them simply waltz in and dismantle their operations. Yet there was no turning back. Her fleet was already descending toward the surface, and the time for hesitation had passed. "We'll go dark as we approach," Kara ordered. "Disable all non-essential systems. We'll make this a surgical strike." As the fleet cut its power and cloaked itself from the Syndicate's sensors, Kara's thoughts turned to the ground forces. She had deployed a special strike team, an elite group of soldiers led by Captain Elias Holt. Holt had been one of the first to sign up for the human resistance after the Valkal's invasion, and his team had proven themselves time and time again. They would be the ones to infiltrate the Syndicate's complex and take control of the facility. The operation was going to be brutal. Kara knew that. The Syndicate didn't take prisoners, and they certainly didn't leave survivors. But the stakes were higher than ever. If humanity's first victory meant anything, it was that they had the courage to push back, to fight for their future no matter the cost. As the Vanguard's hull shuddered with atmospheric turbulence, Kara's heart raced. She could feel the weight of every decision pressing down on her. If they succeeded in this operation, they would strike a powerful blow against the Syndicate, breaking their stranglehold on Nyx and securing a foothold on this strategically important world. But if they failed, if the Syndicate was able to regroup and retaliate, it could spell the end for humanity's fledgling empire. "Status report," Kara demanded as the ship descended further, now only minutes away from the surface. "Shields are holding," came the response. "Weapons primed. Strike teams are in position." The last words hung in the air like a weight. This was it. There was no more room for second chances. Kara's eyes scanned the tactical map of Nyx's surface. The Syndicate's complex was nestled in a mountain range, an ideal location for a heavily fortified base. From the map, Kara knew that the Syndicate's command center was located deep underground, protected by multiple layers of security. It would be a fortress within a fortress. They would need to breach it quickly, before reinforcements arrived. "Deploy strike team immediately," Kara ordered. "Go in hard. Go in fast. I want them on the ground before the Syndicate has a chance to regroup." As the team descended to the surface in specialized drop pods, the ground beneath the Vanguard rumbled. The battle above was fierce, with enemy warships continuing their attack on Kara's fleet. But the real war would be fought below, in the heart of the Syndicate's stronghold. Captain Holt's voice came over the comms, his tone steadied despite the chaos. "We're on the ground. Moving to objective." Kara exhaled, her grip tightening on the console as the sound of the battle raged on. The countdown had begun. The Syndicate would soon realize they had underestimated humanity once again. But what would happen after this strike was anyone's guess. The drop pod smashed into the barren surface of Nyx with a deafening crack, sending plumes of dust and debris into the air. The impact barely registered for the soldiers inside, the shock absorbed by the reinforced hulls of the pods. The ground trembled as the pod's doors hissed open, releasing Captain Elias Holt and his team of elite soldiers into the harsh, desolate landscape. The surface of Nyx was an unforgiving wasteland, littered with jagged rocks and deep fissures. The swirling red dust storms that constantly whipped across the planet's surface made visibility almost impossible. But Holt and his team were used to harsh conditions. They were veterans of the conflict with the Valkal, seasoned in environments far worse than this one. They moved fast, checking their weapons and securing the perimeter. The operation had only just begun, but the tension was palpable. "We're in position." Holt's voice crackled through the comms. "Heading to the facility now. We need to be fast. Time's not on our side." Kara Rhodes stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, eyes fixed on the tactical readouts. The strike team was deep on the planet's surface, moving towards the Syndicate's fortified command center. Above them, the Vanguard's fleet engaged in a pitched battle with the Syndicate's reinforcements, the ship's shields flickering as they absorbed fire from enemy warships. But their attention was now divided. The true objective was on the ground. "Keep comms open," Kara ordered, her voice cutting through the tense air. "Any issues? And I want to know the second they arise." Her mind was torn between the need to maintain the battle above and the growing anxiety about what Holt and his team were facing on Nyx. The Syndicate was ruthless, and their facility was likely rigged with traps and heavily armed guards. The soldiers weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to cripple the Syndicate's operations and send a message to the galaxy. Failure wasn't an option. Holt's team. As Holt and his squad moved through the rocky terrain, the air grew heavier with tension. The Syndicate's facility lay ahead, nestled in the heart of a mountain range, its exterior blending into the landscape. The complex was built into the rock itself, a towering fortress that seemed impenetrable. Surveillance drones patrolled the skies, but Holt's team was well trained in avoiding detection. They had been briefed on every piece of intelligence they could get their hands on, and that included the patrol routes of the Syndicate's forces. "We're close," whispered Lieutenant Jane Carter, a sniper and one of Holt's most trusted soldiers. Her sharp eyes scanned the horizon, every movement alerting her to the possibility of enemy activity. The team moved in a tight formation, the sound of their boots barely audible over the howling winds of the storm. They reached the edge of the facility, crouching behind a rocky outcrop to survey the entrance. The entrance was guarded, but Holt had anticipated this. 2 guards at the front gate, heavy weaponry, but nothing we can't handle, Holt said, speaking softly into his comm. "We breach on my mark." The soldiers nodded, their faces grim but determined. They had trained for moments like this, when every second counted. Holt's eyes locked with Carter's, and she gave a subtle nod, signaling she was ready. On Holt's signal, the squad surged forward. 2 of the soldiers, Private Ben O'Connor and Corporal Elena Ruiz, deployed smoke charges, creating a thick cloud of cover that shrouded their movements. The guards at the front gate didn't see it coming. They barely had time to raise their weapons before Carter's sniper rifle echoed through the night, taking them both down with deadly precision. "We're in," Holt said, motioning for his team to move. "Stay sharp. We're not alone in there." The interior of the facility was a labyrinth of narrow hallways, steel walls, and flickering lights. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the silence. Holt's team had already encountered resistance. A small squad of Syndicate soldiers had attempted to ambush them in a narrow corridor, but they were quickly neutralized. Still, Holt knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge lay deeper within the facility. They reached the control room, the heart of the Syndicate's operations on Nyx. It was larger than Holt had expected, a vast expanse of holographic terminals, servers, and blinking lights. The Syndicate's command center was well equipped, far beyond what they had initially anticipated. But there was no time to waste. Holt's mission was clear: destroy the Syndicate's communications and intelligence infrastructure, and take any leaders alive for interrogation. "Plant the charges on the main terminal," Holt ordered. "We're not leaving anything intact here." The soldiers moved quickly, setting explosives around the critical systems. But as Holt moved to check one of the terminal screens, a voice crackled over the facility's PA system. "I knew you'd come, humans." The voice was cold, smug, one that sent a shiver down Holt's spine. "But you're too late." Holt's stomach tightened. The voice belonged to someone high in the Syndicate, perhaps their leader or a key commander. The words lingered, echoing through the cold corridors. "Your fleet is already doomed, and so are you. We've prepared for this moment. You cannot win." Suddenly, Alarms blared, filling the room with a cacophony of warning signals. Holt's eyes widened as a flood of Syndicate soldiers flooded the hallways outside. They had walked straight into a trap. "Get to the extraction point now," Holt shouted. "We're pulling out." The soldiers grabbed their weapons and sprinted for the nearest exit, but the Syndicate was closing in. Holt knew that this wasn't just about stopping the Syndicate's operations. It was a fight for their lives. The countdown to the charges was still ticking, and Holt had no intention of dying here. He had a job to do, and it wasn't over yet. The halls of the Syndicate's command center were alive with the staccato echo of boots hitting steel floors. The alarms had blared, signaling the infiltration of Holt's strike team. The countdown on the explosives mounted around the critical systems was ticking down with a relentless precision, each second slipping away like sand through an hourglass. The Syndicate was closing in. Holt's team was trapped, but there was no turning back now. "Move! Move!" Holt barked as they rounded a corner. The facility's dim lights flickered overhead, casting an eerie glow on the steel walls. The sound of footsteps and weaponry echoed from the corridors behind them. The Syndicate soldiers were closing in. Too many, too fast. Extraction points 200 meters away. Carter, the sniper, called out, glancing behind her. "But we've got company. A whole damn squad's on our tail." Holt's eyes scanned the walls, taking in the situation. The extraction point was close, but so was the Syndicate's ambush. His heart raced as his mind raced through his options. The walls around them were barren. No cover, no blind spots. But Holt was no rookie. He had survived worse. He knew how to turn the odds in their favor. "Ruiz, O'Connor, cover our backs," Holt ordered, as he and Carter broke into a sprint, leading the team towards the extraction point. The sound of blaster fire erupted behind them as O'Connor and Ruiz held their ground, taking out Syndicate soldiers one by one, their precision deadly. As they neared the extraction zone, Holt felt a sudden jolt in his chest. He turned to see Carter, eyes wide in horror. A pulse shot from the ceiling above, striking her in the shoulder. She staggered, falling to her knees. "Damn it!" Holt swore, but he had no time to stop. The situation was unraveling fast. He reached down, yanked Carter up by her uninjured arm, and kept moving, ignoring the searing pain that bloomed in his chest from the adrenaline. "Keep moving, Carter," he grunted. "We're almost there." But as the team neared the final hallway that would lead them to the exit, the ground trembled beneath them. Holt's instincts flared. Something was wrong. And then it hit them. The Syndicate had activated the facility's lockdown protocols. The doors to the extraction point slammed shut, locking them inside. "Shut the doors," Holt shouted, but his voice was drowned by the clamor of metallic grinding as the system powered up. The walls began to close in, and the ceiling started to lower. "Not good, Holt," O'Connor yelled, his voice sharp with panic. "They're sealing us in. We're trapped." "Everyone, focus," Holt roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We breached those doors. Now." The team rushed to the locked doors, but there was no way to break through without explosives, and they had no more time. The countdown to detonation was closing in. "We'll never make it," Carter gasped, clutching her shoulder. "The whole damn place is going down, and we're still inside." Holt's heart clenched. He wasn't going to let his team die like this, not after everything they had fought for, not after all the sacrifices they had made. His eyes flickered back to the terminal they had rigged with explosives. The countdown was at 30 seconds. "Everyone, back to the terminal," Holt shouted, running toward the control center. "We're blowing it all. If we're going down, we're taking them with us." The team scrambled, firing as they moved. But the Syndicate soldiers were coming in from all sides. Time was running out, and the walls of the facility were closing in. Holt reached the terminal, his fingers flying across the panel, overriding the facility's shutdown command. 20 seconds. Ruiz yelled, "We've got no time left." The facility was no longer just a military outpost. It was a ticking time bomb. Holt's eyes burned as he finished the override, setting off the final series of detonations that would cripple the Syndicate's operations and erase every shred of data stored in their systems. "Everyone, get out. Now," Holt screamed. But it was too late. The first explosion went off with a deafening roar, followed by a chain reaction that rattled the entire facility. The walls began to collapse, and the entire complex seemed to tremble as if it was alive, screaming in defiance. Above Nyx, back in orbit, Kara Rhodes gripped the arms of her chair as the Vanguard took another hit from the Syndicate's warships. The battle had reached its zenith. The remaining Syndicate fleet had gathered strength, but humanity's forces had begun to push them back. "Report," Kara demanded. "Enemy ships are retreating," came the response from the tactical officer. "They're scattering, Captain. They can't hold out much longer." But Kara's relief was short-lived. She knew the real fight was still on the ground. Her pulse quickened as she waited for any word from Holt's team. Every minute felt like an eternity. Then, a message crackled through her comms. "This is Holt. We've detonated the charges. The Syndicate's facility is down." "Repeat, facility is down." Holt's voice was strained but steady. "We lost a few good men, but we've crippled them. I'm coming home." The words sent a rush of adrenaline through Kara's veins. The mission had been a success, but at a terrible price. Holt's voice was heavy with the cost of their victory. They had struck a blow at the Syndicate, but the loss of life weighed heavily. "Get us to Nyx now," Kara ordered, her voice unwavering. "Prepare to assist in ground evacuation. We're not leaving until every man and woman is safe."